I thought I dropped acid. It's surreal. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just couldn't believe it.
I've read it multiple times, and every time I read it,
Let me ask you this. How many members comprised the Misfire Hurricane team?
Mm-hmm. There were 3 teams over that period of time. I would venture to guess, again, depending on how you count them.
Just roughly.
At least half a dozen to a dozen on each of those iterations. I'll turn around and see if I'm somewhat close.
Does that include their supervisors?
Generally speaking.
Half dozen to a dozen?
And probably a little bit more if you're going to go all the way up the chain through all the different levels at the Bureau.
Do you or your team have a feel for how many of these folks are still at the FBI? I know you tried to answer that. Does anybody know that?
Well, the higher level people, as you know, have changed over in the last year. So the director, deputy director, et cetera, the assistant director, deputy assistant director, a lot of people at the upper levels are no longer.
But are some of the actual agents?
Some of the agents are still there.
Are they still working on FISA applications?
I would encourage you to speak to the FBI about that. I think they have.
Yeah, I think we will.
I think they've taken some steps in that regard. I understand.
It's easier to divorce your spouse around here than it is to get fired. Mm-hmm. That's clear. At least at the FBI. Mm-hmm. Is Mr. Orr still at the Department of Justice?
That my understanding is he is.
He's still there?
That's my understanding.
How long within the FBI, I know you just issued your report, but how long within the FBI has this been knowledge?
So we sent the draft for classification.
Not your document, excuse me for interrupting, but just the fact that there was a major league screw up here.
It evolved over time. They did not know a lot of this until we found it.
But they know
for example,
it now,
the altered email, they didn't know that.
Ray knows it now, though, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
That's what I was saying. As of the end of August.
All right. Does your report vindicate Mr. Comey?
It doesn't vindicate anyone at the FBI who touched this, including the leadership.
Does it vindicate Mr. McCabe?
Same answer.
How about Ms. Page?
A little different there because, as we found here, she wasn't involved in this, so I actually largely wasn't involved in this. So
she participated
in some discussions, but was not in the FISA chain, which is
who on that note, who briefed the agent that was sent to surveil Michael Flynn during the meeting with President Trump?
That was discussed up and down the chain at the FBI.
Okay.
So that was not a hidden fact or hidden information.
All right. I like the fact that you and your team are very precise in your language. Frankly, I wish I wrote as well as you and your team do. And I noticed you were careful to say, I'm going to quote here, we did not find documentary or testimonial evidence that political bias or improper motivation influenced the decisions to open the 4 individual investigations. Your words.
Correct.
No documentary evidence and no testimonial evidence. So you didn't find any documents that said, we did this to get Trump. Right?
Or text messages like the struck page text messages.
And nobody who was involved in this circus without a tent looked you in the eye and said, yep, I did it to get Trump. Nobody did that.
Or, for example, a whistleblower come in or other people tell us they heard something like that. None of the
agents you talked to looked you in the eye and said, yeah, you're right, I did it to get Trump.
And nobody came in through a different means and said, I've got a problem here with this, what's going on.
I mean, you don't have to qualify as Mensa material to know not to do that to the Inspector General, right?
Yes, although look at some of the text messages we found.
So
I'm not sure.
I understand.
That may be a counter narrative to that.
Well, I don't want to get too, I don't know what's the word, epistemological here, but
Right.
is the absence of evidence always the evidence of absence?
No, it isn't.
So can you rule out categorically, unequivocally, and unconditionally that there was no bias here by the fact that you didn't find anything in writing and none of these chuckleheads looked you in the eye and said, yeah, I did it to get Trump?
Well, yeah, it's rare that I could tell you at any point in time, I could unequivocally 100% say this actually happened. So
Okay.
I get it. I will say that somewhat the difference on the opening is we concluded, based on the evidence, that Mr. Priestap opened it. We have not seen in last year's investigation or this investigation, looking through texts, emails, et cetera, talking to other people, any evidence that he did it for a improper purpose. Can I tell you 1,000% someone won't walk in a week and say, aha, you missed this? But that's what I'm saying.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let's talk about the people involved in the initial FISA application and the renewals. These are experienced people, right?
In this case, these were experienced people.
Many of them had professional degrees, include but not limited to law degrees, right?
I actually don't know what all their degrees were.
Okay. They knew the law.
They should have not only known the law, they should have known every single policy that they had to deal with
I
here.
mean, they were handpicked by Mr. McCabe, right?
They were handpicked.
Okay. This wasn't their first rodeo.
It certainly wasn't, with maybe an exception or two towards the end, of relatively new agents coming on board.
Well,
But that to me, that should not have been an excuse, just to
Sure.
be clear.
Well, it just seems to me that it has to be one or two things. Either incompetence or intentional conduct.
I agree. It's either sheer incompetence, intentionality, or something perhaps in between.
So which
Rosnet-
do you think it is?
We've got so many different people here. First of all, it wouldn't be fair to lump everybody into one because there are different actors coming in at different times. Some people have more touches of this than others. I think it's fair for people to sit there and look at all of these 17 events and wonder how it could be purely incompetence. Okay.
Well, I want to thank you again. I know this puts you in a tough spot. And I hope you'll tell your colleagues back at the FBI that we appreciate their work.
Absolutely.
But it's got to be fixed.
Yeah.
Senator
Somebody's
Black,
got, at a minimum, somebody's got to be fired.
Yeah.
Agree completely. There's got to be a change in the culture also.
I'm done.
Agreed. Thank
I'm
you.
done, Mr. Chairman.
Excellent. Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr.